Hey guys, I want to dive into what I think is one of the biggest financial scams you've probably never even thought about. This kind of hiding in plain sight. You've been told, we've all been told, that the greedy corporations and the broken healthcare system that's out there, we know about that. But what if the real story is that you, the American taxpayer, the American patient, and that's all of us, that we're the ones footing the bill for the entire world's medical innovations. You're paying the premium prices so that the other countries across the ocean can get the same breakthrough drugs years later, but they're going to get them at a discount. And they chip in next to nothing for the research. We're talking about a system where like 26% of the world's GDP, you, the U.S., the American citizen, you're covering about 70% of that, of the global profits for patented medicines. And it's been going on for decades. We're getting hosed, people. And I want to find out if I'm wrong on that. I want to get some clarity on that. So I got a guest that's pulling the curtain back on all of this. He's not just here to complain like I am. He's here with a plan. Jeff Gerrish, he just penned an op-ed in Newsweek laying out a vision for how Donald Trump, what he could do for prescription drug prices, what he already did for NATO. And that's make our so-called allies pay their fair share. No more free rides, no more foreign price controls that kneecap our innovation while competitors are smiling all the way to the bank. No more letting other nations treat the U.S. breakthroughs like their own personal discount pharmacy. I think you and I could get on board with that. So I don't want failed European socialist models. I don't want that. I want accountability and competition. I want transparency. I want those reforms to keep the free market strong. I want what's coming to me, baby, because I'm the one paying for it, right? So there is a new initiative that's out there, and we're going to talk about that, putting America first when it comes to drug pricing, and we're going to talk about that. So Jeff's here tonight to walk us through the process of how we protect American wallets with these drug craziness. Welcome to the show, Jeff Gerrish, everybody. There he is. That's my little opening piece, Jeff. I want you to correct me where I'm wrong. You wrote this recent Newsweek op-ed, and you basically talked about President Trump's recent success with trying to fix NATO. And you compared that with fixing the prescription drug prices. Unpack the parallel, but first, tell us what the problem is.
Well, thanks, Chad. Thanks very much for having me on and giving me this opportunity to talk about it. You're absolutely right. You have it exactly right. And the problem is that, we in the United States are bearing the bulk of the burden here in terms of paying for the research and development that has to go into developing new drugs. And as you correctly pointed out, we're just about 26% of world GDP, yet we're funding over close to 75% of the profits for pharmaceutical companies. That's crazy. And what's happening is countries around the world are freeloading off of the American taxpayer and American patients in what they're paying to try to develop these new drugs. And, we need to get at the root cause of the problem. We don't want to adopt the kinds of price controls that these other countries have in place. We need to get at the source of the problem, and that is the kinds of policies and practices that these other countries have that result in artificially low prices, drive the prices down for pharmaceuticals in those countries, and they don't protect our companies' intellectual property rights. So it leads to this unfair system where the U.S. consumer, the U.S. patient is paying too much, and they're basically bankrolling the access that other countries have to the innovation that takes place here in the U.S. And so we need to end that practice.
So you're talking about, the U.S. Covering 70% of global profits for patented medicines. That's a scary number. And then, can you talk to me a little bit about the ACT, the Accountability, Competition, and Transparency reforms? How's that different from what's been done in the past with drug pricing? Is it truly a reform in this case?
Well, I think it is reform, and the president really, as usual, he's got it right. He knows that that there is a problem here, that we are taking on too much of the burden in the United States, and he's trying to come up with a solution to try to address the problem, and I think he's done it in other contexts, and I think it's a matter of just really taking what he's done you alluded to the situation with defense spending with NATO. That's right on point with what he can do here with other countries. And it's also there's a lot of parallels between what he's doing with trade practices generally and trying to the tariffs that he's imposing, the trade deals he's getting. He's trying to get at this problem of fundamental unfairness in the way other countries either are freeloading on what we're doing or treating our companies and our workers and farmers and ranchers unfairly around the world. So this is it. There are a lot of parallels with everything the president's trying to do, and I think that's what we really need. We really need to get at these practices that the other countries are engaged in, both in terms of pricing and their failure to protect our intellectual property. Because all it's doing is it's resulting more of a burden on our people and patients and in terms of what they're paying for drugs here in the United States.
There's only so long that you can operate with 8 puppies and 6 tits. You know what I'm saying, Jeff? I mean, you can't. I mean, the whole world is suckling at the breast of the United States for so long, and we're just after a while that whole deal's going to fall apart. So when you talk about foreign price controls, that's damaging both to U.S. innovation and competition. I would think that steals a lot of our incentive to be the best. Am I correct in thinking that way?
It does. You're absolutely right about that. And that's the problem here because, I mean, when you're trying to develop a new medicine, new drug, it's a very expensive proposition. You're talking hundreds of millions, if not over $1 billion in research and development, the investment that it takes. And, when these countries are driving down the price, they're really engaged in these price control policies and practices that, and it's countries around the world. It's the Europeans, it's Japan, Korea. That's going to lessen the incentive for companies to invest in trying to develop these new drugs. It's something that sometimes we take for granted here in the United States in terms of what we have access to, but it's because these companies are willing to invest the money to develop these drugs. But when you have price control policies and practices around the world that are driving those prices, that they just can't afford to invest the money that's necessary to develop them. And I mean, a lot of times these drugs take 10 years even to commercialize them and get them to market. So, you need the kind of, I think we all need to really have our, take on our fair share of what the burden is. And that's other countries around the world as well as the United States. It can't just be the U.S. As you said, we can't just always be us funding everything. We have to have other countries paying their fair share.
This is one of those things that reminds me where, everybody wants to complain about the price of eggs. I've never in my life seen so many people concerned about the price of eggs. I don't know how many eggs you can eat, but everybody in America is worried about the price of eggs. And I see Donald Trump, the tariffs, they're working, it's proving to work. He's sealed up the border. Now he's cleaning up crime in inner cities. He's taken on a lot of things that affect a lot of Americans, and there's things that I don't think we think about. Now we can complain about the price of our prescriptions and our pharmaceuticals, but we don't ever ask why. Like, what are the causes of those effects? And we sort of live in this bubble, this secure bubble. Like, we don't even think about where our pharmaceuticals come from or how they got to the pharmacy. We don't think about the fact that a lot of times they come from China or, across we have a trade war and suddenly we don't have drugs. We don't have the medicines that we do need. And some of those are life-saving and life-preserving and all of these things. And, certainly not certainly not an episode where we're going to promote big pharma, but there is medicine. Thank God for scientific medical breakthroughs. But, man, you want to be able to afford them. And, when you talk about, the foreign price fixing and the delayed approvals, the non-tariff trade barriers, what in practice, what does that mean for the average American citizen?
Yeah, what it means is, you have these other countries around the world who, again, have these various practices, and it can take a variety of forms. Sometimes they pin their prices to the prices for drugs in the poorest countries in the world. Mm-hmm. Some poor countries in Eastern Europe. Sometimes they engage in flawed studies in terms of, determining what the price should be. In Japan, They just literally have a policy where they cut the prices of drugs year after year, just right after they're introduced, regardless of how innovative or effective they are. So what that does is that results in people in other countries paying less than they should for the drugs, and then the more the burden coming on the U.S. Now, if we were able to get these other countries to invest more, to pay more, that spreads it out more. It reduces the costs here in the United States for patients and the American people, and then it results in a situation where people around the world are going to pay more. They're going to pay their fair share. And really, there's a couple of ways to do this, and I think it should be done, really in combination. One is do what the president did essentially with the NATO defense spending issue, which is get other countries around the world to commit to spending a certain level of their per capita GDP on innovative drug research and innovative drugs. And all we're looking for them to do, what they should do, is do it at the same level the United States does it. Make it there, spread it out, and what that's going to do is it's first of all, it's going to lessen the costs here in the United States. It's going to even it out around the world, and it's going to result in even more research and development on these really essential medicines that we all need. The other way to do this, of course, is do what the president's doing in the trade negotiations, negotiate and get the other countries to remove these unfair policies that they have. They're non-tariff barriers is what they are in terms of these pricing policies that they have and their failure to protect our companies' intellectual property. And so, that's so they can do it both ways. That's getting at the root of the problem. We really don't want to have a situation where we're importing the price controls that other countries engage in. That's just basically capitulating to what these other countries are doing around the world. So let's get at the heart of the problem. And I think the end result is going to be that our people are going to pay less for medicines, and it's just going to spread the burden and make it fair around the world.
Well, I really like the NATO parallel example that you use, because it really does. I mean, I loved it when he, looked in the face of Spain and said, 5%. This is what we're doing. And I think Trump, you said in the article on Newsweek, and we will put that article in the description below the episode. I want people to go read it. But you referred to it as a historic opportunity to make these changes. And, I think that Trump is the guy who's going to get it done. He's not the Elizabeth Warren or the Bernie Sanders that's bought out by Big Pharma. He really is trying to hold their feet to the fire, and there's some accountability without importing, as you said, the price controls that these European nations are doing. If these reforms succeed, what does that look like for the American patient, the American economy, even national security? Because I think this is a national security issue, right?
It is. It absolutely is. You pointed it out earlier. We don't want to be reliant on other countries for medicines generally, but particularly innovative medicines. The kinds of things that are the cutting edge medicines that we need to treat some of the worst diseases and illnesses that unfortunately afflict people. And what this will do is this will really help our companies in terms of their efforts to innovate here and develop these drugs here. And the president's other policies and practices, including what he's doing on trade, it's incentivizing more investment in manufacturing here in the U.S., including in pharmaceuticals. So this combination will keep the U.S. where we should be, which is at the top of innovation and R&D and what we're doing in the pharmaceutical space, not China, not any of these other countries that we really don't want to be reliant on and can't be reliant on. We saw this. The president's been talking about this for decades, right? He's gotten this right, both just generally on trade, but also specifically in the pharmaceutical and area and drug pricing area. But we saw this really, really clearly during the pandemic, right? Because we were so reliant on China in particular, on medical equipment, on pharmaceuticals, on other things. So it's the kind of thing we need to have the innovation being done here. We need our companies doing it. We need to have them have their intellectual property protected. We need to have them, get the pricing that they should get around the world to be able to fund this research and to do the manufacturing here in the United States as well. I think that's really all critical. And that's all the things that the president's trying to do.
Yeah, what's the opposition here? I mean, is this a left-right issue? Is this just getting the other countries to do their fair share and to bow to what we need them to do and what we're demanding they do? What's the opposition here?
Yeah, it's really hard to identify what the opposition is, really. I mean, certainly the countries around the world would fight us on this. And you know, I served in the first Trump administration. I was regularly trying to work with other countries around the world to get them to change all their policies and practices on these issues. And you know, they're definitely, you know, they want to protect their own systems and fight, you know, what the U.S. is trying to do. So certainly, you know, you have the other countries fighting this. Now in the U.S., I mean, the only thing really is that the only issue I think this runs into is, you know, there's sort of this demonization of the pharmaceutical industry, which is, in my opinion, crazy, because I mean, they're so critical in terms of, you know, what we need in developing these new medicines to treat you know, the illnesses and diseases, and you know, everybody wants to criticize the pharmaceutical industry until they come down with some terrible illness or their family member does, and they need that critical medicine. But you know, I think that's the only thing that really I can see here is really this is just a basic. This is not some radical idea. This is a basic fairness idea. And that's really, when you look at what the president's doing on any number of fronts, what underpins a lot of it? Fairness, right? NATO, he's trying to get other countries to do their fair share you know, for their own national defense. Same with trade generally. He's trying to get other countries to treat us more fairly. And it comes down to this with this issue as well. We're just looking for other countries to do their fair share. That's what they should be doing here. The burden shouldn't all be on the American people, and you know, and that's the way it's been, as you said, for years and years.
You know, I always get a kick out of people who want to make the comments, and listen, I understand that talking about pharmaceuticals and the drug industry, it's a hotbed issue, especially after we saw what happened through COVID and through the pandemic, and people are it's a very touchy thing, you know. They do feel control. They don't trust the medical industry anymore, and big pharma certainly they don't. They want to see some accountability there. What are some things? I mean, we shared a clip yesterday on the show where, you know, the Walgreens was looted out. I mean, there was nothing on the shelves, but there were still people standing in line in the back of the pharmacy. They were still waiting on their prescription drugs, right? Nothing else in the store, but they were still waiting, lined up. People, they depend on that stuff. You know, I joke about standing in the back of the pharmacy back there with the, you know, the diabetic socks and the walkers and the pre-cut tennis balls, waiting on my lisinopril so I can bring my blood pressure down, and whether or not it's got hydrochlorothiazide. I'm thankful that I get that stuff when my blood pressure, you know, it gets out of control without it. What's a misconception, though, before I let you go? What's a misconception that people have about drugs and drug pricing? Is there anything you wish people understood? And then more importantly, is there a way that everyday Americans, we're all patients, we're all, you know, voters, we all care for people who need medical help or need our care. How can we support this reform effort? What can we actually do?
Yeah, I think one thing that everybody can do is weigh in with your member of Congress. I mean, you know, that really, I mean, that's critical. I can tell you in terms of impact that it has on what the administration is doing and how they're directing their efforts. You know, members of Congress really have a strong impact on that. And there's been some good efforts in Congress in terms of trying to push this issue the right way, which is trying to get other countries to pay their fair share. In fact, there were a couple of letters just sent to the administration by both the Senate and the House. But weighing in with your member of Congress, getting them to weigh in with the White House and with the administration is really important. And really, you know, I mean, I think Americans really believe in the market. And I think we don't want price controls here in the U.S. I mean, we don't want the systems that other countries have developed. That's not what we want here. We got to get at the root problem here. And I think people should really focus their efforts on what we need other countries to do to change their policies so that, you know, the burden is less on the U.S. and we're paying less for drugs here. Because again, everybody recognizes what there's an issue here. We need to get fairer drug pricing, but the way to do that is to make sure other countries are doing their part and not really, free riding and freeloading off of the American people. So that's, I think, getting Congress to weigh in on it, weighing in directly, even with people don't realize how much of an impact they can have.
Yeah.
But I think doing it through your member of Congress is a good way to do it, and they can have a real impact.
Other than reading the articles and following you, is there a website people can get involved with or see or find out more information? Because we will put everything down in the description down there.
Yeah, I think there is. It's www.mostfavoredpatient.org, and it's got. I don't know if it. I apologize. I don't know if this matters or not, but it's got a capital M, F, and P in it, so that may make a difference. But I don't know. But anyway, that's the website. I would definitely head there. It's got a lot of good materials there as well.
I love it. We'll put it in there. Jeff Gerrish, man, keep up the fight. Thank you. It's always a pleasure talking to you. It's informative, man. These are the things that matter. So thank you for informing us and letting us know what's going on. And we'll put the pressure on them for sure. Jeff Gerrish, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, guys, make sure that you check out the website, and we'll throw it down there in the description. Make sure that you read the article as well and follow the information that Jeff's putting out there. It's fantastic stuff. They're great. They're great folks out there. They're showing you the way, and these are things that we typically don't think of when we're sitting here in this overblown secure bubble that can pop at any time. There's so many things that could affect our lives, and I'm thankful that Jeff's doing the work that he's doing. In the meantime, make sure you hit like, share this episode with the folks that this could affect, and that is literally everyone. So make sure that you are sharing this information so that people are aware, and they will hold their elected officials accountable with something like this. And we're praying Donald Trump continues to win, and this is one of those areas we want him to win in. So subscribe to the channel, click like, and put us a comment down below. Let us know what you think, and we will talk to you next time. Love you. God bless. Bye.